Hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Jason Hagholm Sports Experience. I am joined today by a very special guest, one of the writers for the Yahoo Sports on hockey for the world-famous Puck Daddy blog, Sean Leahy. Sean, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Sean, it's been a pretty interesting week in the world of hockey. I mean, we're coming off the NHL All-Star Game, some announcements about international hockey, but today there was some big news as Martin Brodeur officially announced his retirement. What did you think of the announcement of the retirement and him sticking with the St. Louis Blue organization?
Well, I think as fans, just not just hockey fans, but sports fans in general, we like seeing these athletes that stay with one franchise, right? The Derek Jeters, the Steve Yzermans, the guys like that. They spend their whole careers, build a legacy, maybe win some championships, do some things, in the community there, and retire. And they're forever a Yankee or forever a Red Wing. And certainly, we'll always think of Martin Brodeur as a New Jersey Devil. But certainly this little stop with the Blues for a couple games before the end of his career will certainly be one of the little Aussies when we look back. It will be like Mark Messier when he went to the Canucks or Bobby Orr when he was with the Blackhawks. But despite the weird little ending, it was certainly a great career, one of the greatest goalies of all time. Certainly he's going to be a no doubt about it Hall of Famer 3 years from now. So he wanted to kind of go out on his own terms. He wanted to keep playing at the end of last season after it was clear that he wasn't going to return to Devils, and he had to wait a little while, and he got the opportunity with the Blues. But certainly once Brian Elliott got healthy and Jake Allen stayed healthy, being the third man on their depth chart and not having any other NHL teams calling Doug Armstrong to trade, try and trade for his services, kind of made Mark realize, hey, I had my one last shot, and at 42, I think it's time to hang up. I've had a great enough career.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, Thursday will be a very emotional press conference, I think, for when he officially makes the announcement. The one thing I guess is interesting is now he's with the Blues for the remainder of the season. Do you think at the start of the next season he will eventually find his way back with the Devils, or is he kind of got a bit of a grudge against Lou Lamoriello after the whole, I guess, bringing in Corey Schneider when he still felt he could be at the top of his game?
No, I think there's no bad blood. I mean, Lou is almost like a father figure to Brodeur. They were together for over 20 years with the Devils, and I believe, I think I read the plan was, like you mentioned, he'll finish out this year working in the Blues organization, but next year he'll join the Devils in some capacity, maybe like a consultant or whatever. I spoke to him over the summer while he was looking for a gig, and he said he didn't want to get into coaching. He liked to get into the management offices and be some sort of an executive, and that sounds like what he plans to do with both with the Blues and the Devils next season. So, Don Burrow's always said that no matter what with Marty, he'll always leave a door open for him with the Devils if he wanted to come back and work for them, and he'll get that opportunity next season.
Well, he just will be added to the long list of ex-Devils that were part of those big cup-winning teams added, and I think everyone would be really happy to see that because we all, like as you said earlier, will always remember him as a New Jersey Devil. I guess my last question on the Brodeur topic is, what's your favorite Martin Brodeur moment?
Probably I'm a big fan of goalie goals. So I know he's got a couple of those in his career, and we just had one recently in the AHL. So those are always fun to see. Certainly there's tons of different moments with Brodeur with the amount of things he's done in his career. But for me personally, I love seeing the goalie goals. I love seeing goalies get aggressive, aware of the situation, and just having the confidence, especially Brodeur, who's also one of the best puck-handling goalies of this era, and one of the main reasons why they instituted the trapezoid behind the net, because he was so good at, possessing the puck when it got dumped in the zone. So definitely all of his goalie goals will probably stand out for me.
Yeah, I always remember that first goal he scored. I believe it was against the Canadiens in the first round of the playoffs, and I think '97. And just the sheer joy from him that he couldn't believe he did the feat. For me, I'd say it wouldn't be an NHL, it'd be Olympic moment when he was there in 2002 for Canada, because that Canadian team looked bleak at the start with Curtis Joseph, and he came in and played some sensational hockey between the pipes, and without him, we wouldn't have ended that 50-year drought as a nation. So that would be my favorite moment. Moving along, Mike Richards today cleared waivers, was put on waivers yesterday by the LA Kings. How surprised were you that he was put on waivers and that no one picked him up?
That came as a little bit of a surprise that he was put on waivers, just considering you don't really see guys of his ilk, guys who were considered one of the top players in the league and still relatively young, put on waivers, and as we saw today, he wasn't claimed, so he's going to Manchester NHL. I'm actually not shocked that he wasn't picked up, just because that contract, the amount of term that's left, the amount of money that he's owed, he's just dwindling production really since he's left Philadelphia. I don't think any team, no matter how desperate they are for help down the middle or for a veteran guy in the room, that's a lot of coin to throw on your salary cap, especially with the cap changing next year, and some teams may have guys due for contract extensions coming up, so you don't want to throw it in your cap and that's stuck there for the next however many years he was left, 4 or 5 years. So Lombardi talked to Richards over the summer, kind of gave him a little kick in the butt, say, hey, we need you to get better. We need your production to be better. And he came back to camp, and it just didn't happen for him, no matter what situation the Kings put him in. And so with the Kings kind of tied up, their hands are a little bit tied with the cap situation, with the Slava situation and some other big contracts. They want to get Justin Williams under contract after the season. They were just trying. Lombardi was trying to just get rid of Richards' contract, but like I mentioned, there are no takers, and there's really no surprise that there were any takers for it.
Sean, do you think that Richards being put on waivers is kind of, I guess, a version of a scapegoat or a wake-up call for the rest of the team? Because this Kings team has played well at times, but they're right now they're not inside the playoffs. Yeah,
certainly. I agree. I mean, that Richards, he's a guy who you speak to teammates, past teammates and current teammates. He's a likable guy. He's never hear any problems with him getting along with coaches or teammates. Well-liked guy in the room. So, and with the way the Kings have played, Lombardi pulling this move right as the second half starts, right as right now they're sitting just outside of the playoff spot. Should serve as a wake-up call for them that, hey, if things don't improve, maybe there's a couple more guys that could be on the move. With the trade deadline coming up, who knows who could be gone. Everyone falls back in this thing. Well, the Kings, they'll just turn on the playoffs. Well, yeah, okay, they've done it before, but you can't rely on that. And certainly, Dean Lombardi is smart enough not to rely on the fact that they can just cruise through the regular season and turn it on in playoffs, because the NHL, you just have to respect the opponents, especially the Western Conference or the teams there. They're just so good. You just can't try and walk into the postseason and expect to win 16 games easily like they've done before. So this should serve as a wake-up call for the Kings, and then obviously it's going to be a pretty vital second half for them.
Absolutely. And, just before we're about to get ready for the second half of the season, Sean, you were at the NHL All-Star Game last weekend in Columbus. What was the atmosphere like from the fans in the Columbus area?
It was great. I mean, you come to any of these big NHL events, whether it's like the draft or one of the outdoor games or the All-Star Game, you would just feel a buzz in the city just walking around. I mean, they had a ton of stuff. They had a giant slide right outside like a snow slide right outside the arena that fans can go down. They had some outdoor little like hockey shot things set up, and then they had the giant fan fest inside the convention center where they had games, and you could get a picture with the Stanley Cup and get autographs from past and present players. They had an outdoor skating rink, so it was fantastic. And I know people like to dog on the All-Star Game and say it's meaningless hockey, but I think it's one of those events like the Winter Classic where you got to be there. If you go there, experience it, see what's going on, kind of see all the fans, the little kids enjoying themselves, and that's what it's all about. It's a celebration of hockey. It's not supposed to be a meaningful game. It's a break for 95% of the league, and the other 5% go to wherever the All-Star game is, and just let loose, have some fun, and relax, and we get to see some of the best stars of the league playing with one another. So it was fun. Columbus was a fantastic city. The crowd was great all weekend, from the fantasy draft and skills to the actual game itself. And next year, Nashville should be just as fun.
Well, I think that the NHL's picked some two good markets for have the All-Star game since it's been back after those 2-year hiatus, one from the lockout and then from the Olympic break. I was happy to see Columbus do a great job. There's a lot of teams and organizations were saying they did a great job hosting it, especially for an organization that has shown some signs of improvement, but that's not always been all roses for the Blue Jackets. Now, you spoke of that the NHL All-Star Game gets a lot of flack as not being, an important game or a meaningful game to watch. Is there anything the league do to maybe make it more competitive as some other All-Star games are?
I don't think you need to. I don't want to see it like baseball where the winning, if they go back to the conference format, if the winning side gets home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup playoffs or whatever. I like I said, it's a meaningless game. It's shimmy. I know the play this past Sunday may not have been, quite up to standards as maybe some of the past few All-Star games, but it's meaningless. It's supposed to be fun. Get some of the best players in the league together on the ice and have some unique teammates. Guys playing with one another. Like Ryan Johansson was a line mate with Alex Ovechkin. When are we going to see that ever? So that was pretty cool. So it's just just leave it like it is. I mean, the fantasy draft was a great idea, and I think the fantasy draft, you probably talk to people, probably the best part of the weekend, just because the guys were so loose. I'm sure they were certainly helped by whatever they were drinking in the special cups during the night. But Alex Ovechkin, his whole pursuit of the car, and then we found out afterward why he wanted the car so badly, so he can donate it to a special needs hockey group in the DC area. And you got the skills on Saturday, which to me, I'm a nerd. I love that event. I love seeing the guys try out the different events and kind of test their skills, like the trick shot or the harder shot or the fastest skater and things like that. So I think for the NHL, they should just leave it like it is. People are just going to always going to complain about anything and everything. But like I mentioned before, if you just come here, experience it in person, everything that goes on, not just the stuff in the rink, but outside in the city, I think people will come away with a different appreciation of all.
Is there an event at the skills competition? Because I think that's always the one of the highlights. I mean, obviously this year the fantasy draft was the highlight, as you said. Is there any event they could maybe take away, or one they could add to make the skills competition a little bit more fun for the fans?
That little the little skills relay thing where they had the guys shooting to the little nets and the goalies kind of taking part in shooting at the other goal. It's a nice idea. Maybe that could be tweaked a little bit. That one seemed to drag on a little bit more. And the fastest skater, I wish they would go back to what they did back in the day where the guys would do full laps around the rink. Now they're just kind of cutting down the middle, turning around and going back, and it's a shorter distance. So I'd love to see guys like Eric Carlson or Carl Hagholm or Jonathan Drouin, do the full lap, and we can always look back and see, compare their times to guys like Mike Gartner from way back in the day, and kind of see how they did. But the rest of the events are fine. Going back to fastest skater, I remember, I think it was Ottawa or Carolina, they had the goalie race. I believe it was Tim Thomas and
Cam
or
Ward.
Jimmy Howard. Cam Ward, okay. Yeah, bring that back. I mean, maybe they took it out because they were a little fearful of a guy, a goalie, getting hurt wearing all his pads, but that was pretty funny. So, but the other events are fine. I mean, harder shot, it was a little disappointing this year because we all wanted to see Chara versus Weber, and it didn't happen. And Chara, of course, Weber, of course, took home the honors this year. But everything else was fun and enjoyable, and I think the crowd had a good time.
Now, Sean, to me, the biggest news that came out of the All-Star weekend was the announcement of the 26th World Cup of Hockey. Is this a sign that the NHL is moving away from the Olympics?
Not necessarily, because the players still want to go. Granted, the next it's going to be in Pyeongchang, and I believe 2022 could be in China or Kazakhstan. I think those are the two finals for 2022. But the players still want to go. I mean, granted, this World Cup idea, it's NHL and NHLP run, which means they're going to make a ton of money off of this. I think the projections were like $150 million for the tournament. That's going to be split among the players and the league. That doesn't happen with the Olympics. So certainly the league would prefer keeping the guys in the World Cup of Hockey in a tournament that they both control and make some money off of, as opposed to the Olympics where they're shutting down the league for 2-3 weeks and not really gaining any sort of anything out of it. The players obviously love it because they love representing their country, and certainly take pride in going for a gold medal and winning any sort of medal. But I think it's a little too early to count them out for at least 2018, especially with the way how they have this international calendar set up. So it remains to be seen. Certainly, I mean, look, this past time with 2014, they didn't really come to an agreement until I think it was 6 or 7 or 8 months before they went to Sochi. So we're still a couple of years away from really them needing to make a decision. So certainly they'll be, I'm sure they'll try and figure out and work with the IHF and IOC to maybe try and get some more guarantees or get something out of their participation if they do go in 2018 to make it worthwhile, not just for the players, but also for the league to make it worthwhile to shut down the league for 3 weeks.
Well, the one thing about this tournament, Sean, that I thought was kind of interesting is having the one European team being comprised of like the non-elite European nations, as well as having an under-23 team for Canada and the States. Do you think they should maybe scrap this idea and bring another like actual nation like Slovakia or the Czech Republic in as a whole? Because to me, that just kind of kills the whole World Cup of hockey concept.
Yeah, that's the thing. I agree. I'm a purist. I would love to see 6 nations compete instead of those 2 extra teams. And I think a big mistake they made was naming this the World Cup. Because you think World Cup, you think back to 2004, you think back to 96, and maybe even go back to the old Canada Cup days. Any time to those great competitions of country on country, they were named with something else, maybe there's not so much backlash against it. But the reason why they had these 2 teams, and Gary Bettman said that having that U23 and the Pan-European team will be just a one-time deal. If they do it again in 2019 or 2020, whenever the next one is, they would have 6 full nations because they didn't have enough time to do a qualifying tournament this time around. But I still would have done maybe the top 6 ranked teams out of the IHF rankings this time, and get maybe a Slovakia or a Slovenia or whoever would finish in the 5th and 6th slot. Because it's going to be interesting with this U23 team. They said no matter how good you are, no matter how great of a Canadian or American player you are come September 2016, if you're 23 and under, you're on that team. So at least we'll see Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel as teammates. But those guys, the interesting thing about the U23 team is, those players, they want to play for Canada. They want to represent the U.S. And to have them go against their nation in this tournament, I'm sure it's going to be pretty odd for them. I mean, if you're representing Canada, you're representing USA or Russia, or whatever your country is, you're going to lay out for a shot in a round robin game just because you're playing with pride. Are these guys going to do that because they're playing against their own countries? Are they going to risk going down the block a shot representing this U23 team? I don't know. I think the Pan-European team works a little bit because, like you mentioned, those are those kind of second-tier nations, and they'd be teaming up and facing against those big giants in Russia and Sweden and Finland and U.S. and Canada. And I've already talked to a couple players like Jaro Halak and Franz Nielsen who like the idea because Denmark with Nielsen and Slovakia with Halak, they feel they wouldn't have a chance to beat Canada or beat the U.S. or beat Russia with their nations at the moment. But you put them all together on a team, it kind of gives them a better shot.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I mean, I'm with you. I'm a purist. I love the old Canada Cup and the original 96 and 04 World Cups, so we'll see how things go. The one idea, though, that I found interesting that's kind of being floated around there is an NHL version of the Ryder Cup. Do you see that happening in the near future, or is it just right now a strong idea on paper?
Yeah, I think they're pretty strong in that plan, in having that as the next tournament, and it'll be interesting to see how it's fully set up, and if it's Canada, U.S. against the world, it might be pretty interesting. But I think I'd like to see how this first tournament plays out before I decide on how I feel about the U.S. and Canada teaming up against all of Europe. Certainly, again, if you look at all these things, it's basically it just comes down to the league and the PA making money off of the international play. That's pretty much the goal here, because they can't do that with the Olympics, and they're going to milk it for as much as they can and try and keep things a little bit differently. But at some point, I would like to see them just go back to a traditional, best on best tournament. Whether that's the Olympics or whether this World Cup goes back to what it used to be.
Well, the one thing about the idea of this Ryder Cup is they want to put it in markets where hockey isn't as big, and their belief is they'll make enough money by that point with this 2016 World Cup and, other adventures with the Stadium Series and stuff. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know how well it would work if they put it in London or anything. So maybe, do you have any thoughts on ideas of putting it outside of proper hockey hotbed markets in Europe?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw the thing on London, and the first thing I thought of when I saw them wanting to put the tournament in Europe was, well, AEG owns that rink in Europe, which that's the Phil Anschutz of the Kings. So that's just another tie as far as another owner making money off of this event. I wouldn't put it in London. I would, if you want to change it up, put it in a Stockholm, put it in a Helsinki, put it in a Prague or some European nation where there's tons of hockey love. Maybe by then, relations with Russia will have thawed, and maybe they could put it, back in Sochi or something. But if they're going to do it, put it in Europe. I would just keep it in a strong hockey country, because you're going to get great fans and great passions from your players, especially those who will be from that country. Whatever team, they would certainly take some pride in playing.
Well, Sean, the NHL starts up back tonight, and to me, there's two teams that have really surprised just before the NHL All-Star break, and that'd be the Winnipeg Jets and the New York Islanders. Which of these two is more of a shocking turnaround, and who has the best chance of making the playoffs?
For me, the shocking turn, probably the Jets, only because to me, I knew they were going to be a little better team. Wasn't sure if they were going to make the playoffs this year, and then Michael Hutchinson comes out of nowhere. I mean, Michael Hutchinson really saved their season and is really making a strong push for Calder consideration. So without him, and if they would have rolled with Andre Pavlik as really kind of their heavy number one with the workload, I don't know if they're in the position that they are. So Hutchinson's really come in and done a great job, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles maybe more of a workload as the second half goes on and as the Jets keep pushing for a playoff spot. So, but with the two teams, I would stick with the Islanders as far as making the playoffs, not just because of where they are at the top of the Eastern Conference, but just because they're a much better team. I mean, it's very rare you see a general manager enter the summer and able to check off pretty much everything on his want list. Got some forward depth with Kuhlman and Grabowski, bolstered his defense by trading for Leddy and Boychuk just before the season, and at the end of last year, added Yaroslav Halak with that trade, and eventually they signed him. So Snow has done a great job of it's been a slow build there, but some of their young kids, Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Travis Hamonic, they're really coming to their own and becoming dependable players that are productive and really helping make that team go. And if you look at the Eastern Conference, it's pretty wide open. I mean, the Islanders, if Halak gets hot, we've seen them do it before in the playoffs. the Islanders could be a team that comes out of the East.
Well, I always thought the Islanders were a team that would have made the playoffs last year had Tavares not gotten hurt in Sochi. So I'm really happy to see the turnaround of them. And with the Jets, who would have thought Paul Maurice would have been this strong of a coach for them?
Yeah, I agree. And, I was kind of looking at things at the break and just thinking of ahead of time with the awards. And I'm thinking, the Jets keep it up. I know Barry Trotz has gotten some love, Laviolette gotten some love, and Capriano and John Cooper for the Adams Award. But I think if the Jets make the playoffs, I think it's hard to take it away from Paul Maurice, just the job that he's done there since even going back before the season and turning things around there and really getting the most out of his players. I mean, Dustin Byfuglien, the guy's been a beast this season. Matthew Perreault, he's coming back tonight from injury. He's been fantastic since he came over from Anaheim. And if they could get Evander King going, watch out for them. And of course, this is a team where their defense has really been decimated for most of the season. So they've been able to weather that storm and keep themselves on the cusp of the playoff spot. So that bodes well for the Jets and bodes well for Maurice going forward come award time.
Yeah, I definitely think, to me, he's the winner because we knew that Nashville had the potential, that the Ducks always had the potential, but I mean, just what the Jets have done, I'm blown away by Maurice's success with them. Sean, which teams right now need to make some changes as we're getting close to that trade deadline and in order to make the playoffs, and which teams are just going to be a fire sale mode?
As far as needing to make a deal, I think right now, Boston might need to make a deal. I think they're in a pretty decent spot. 7 points ahead, holding one of those last walkout spots. But the way they've gone this season with the inconsistencies, and they're not really the same Bruins that they were a couple years ago. And I know they're pretty cat-tied with their salaries and stuff. But I think if Chiarelli can finagle a way to kind of shed some salary, bring on some new life in that room, that might help them come playoff time. Same thing goes for maybe in LA, like we talked about earlier. We'll see if this Mike Richards moves wakes up that room. But in a couple of weeks, if they're just still inconsistent, losing the teams that they should beat, I'm sure we're going to see Team Lombardi, pull some sort of move before the deadline to really get strengthening that team going forward. As far as full sell move, gotta be Arizona, right? I mean, they've already traded Devin Dubnyk, Mike Smith. I don't know what happened there. He's just kind of fallen off, really. And the way they are, they're almost 20 points out of a playoff spot. I think it's too much of a hill to climb with 30-something games left to go. I think it's time for Maloney to really kind of throw in the towel, look forward to next season, and really acquiring picks and futures to help make that team better going forward. Antoine Vermette, a guy who's in the final year of his contract, so he's been heavily rumoured traded, so he should be on the move, and I'm sure they could probably get something decent from a team that could use a pretty dynamic center going forward. And also Ottawa, maybe Philadelphia as well. Ottawa's just where they are right now, they're just kind of like a so-so team. There's nothing great about them. And I think, like Arizona, it might be best for them to just kind of say, okay, the season's done, and just start looking forward to the future. They've got a lot of young kids there that are tied up and up and coming, but if they can surround them with some decent talent, they should be good for.
Yeah, with Ottawa, you definitely get the sense that it's going to be rebuild mode as they brought in a brand new coach in Coach Cameron a couple months ago or so. I guess sticking with the other Canadian team within the province of Ontario, are the Leafs going to be a fire sale mode, or are their contracts for some of those star players just too much for any team to want to take on?
Yeah, I'm sure they like to be in fire sale mode, but you look at that Clarkson contract, it's just tough to move it. It's like the Mike Richards deal. Even the Phaneuf contract, it's pretty heavy. I mean, I know there was talk of the Kings and Leafs were really kind of discussing some sort of Richards for Phaneuf deal, but it's the cap, complications really kind of ruled that out. And really with the salaries and the term, you kind of got to match up your cap situations to make sure you're not hindered going forward. So With declining production in both players, I'm not sure, how many takers would be out there and how many teams would want to take on, those years and commit those dollars to those players going forward, knowing that the returns probably aren't going to be that great.
Yeah, that's the one thing for everyone out there in Leaf Nation is, like, could you get back? Those contracts are just so much, and I mean, I know I did hear those rumors that the Kings were looking at the Richards for someone on the Leafs because those two teams seem to have such a great history with each other. So I guess we'll wait and see. We're still just a couple months away from the trade deadline, so maybe something could be worked out. But moving on here, I guess lastly, Sean, with the season kicking back up, I think the one team for me that has a pretty tough test and someone that I guess we should look at is the Chicago Blackhawks as they begin their second half of their season after the All-Star break on a big West Coast trip tomorrow against those Kings, and then it's, I believe, the Ducks and the Sharks. Do you think they are a team to watch because they've kind of slumped, had a bit of a rough patch going into the break, and if they have a strong West Coast trip, they could be back into that Stanley Cup contender, or is there another team you think?
No, I think, they kind of bump the road for a team like Chicago. I don't think it derails them as much as it might other teams around the league. This is a veteran group. A lot of these guys have been together for, 4 or 5 seasons now, 1, 2 Stanley Cups together. So when there's a 2, 3, 4 game losing streak, it's not freak out time among them. The guys are veteran. They've experienced everything, and they know they know not to panic because there's no use in panicking. It doesn't do them any good. Whereas some younger teams, maybe they might, maybe those players might grip their sticks a little bit, maybe try a little too hard and put themselves out of position. But, Blackhawks are a veteran group, very smart team, well coached, built well. I think any kind of struggle might make them better in the long run, especially where they are in the standings, sitting pretty comfortably in a playoff spot. Certainly, it's going to be tough getting out of that division with St. Louis and Nashville having strong seasons as well, and certainly a lot of pressure on the Blues after they've kind of fallen short the last couple seasons. So I think they'll have a pretty good West Coast trip, and I think the way they're set up, they could, to me, in my eyes right now, I think they're the team that should be favored out west for the time being. We'll see how much that changes over the next 2.5 months before playoff time. But I think right now I would take Chicago coming out of the West if you had to ask me.
Well, it'll be real interesting to see with the Blackhawks. So you're seeing maybe a Nashville collapse there, Sean?
Not so much a Nashville collapse, but I just I don't know. I think Pecorino can only do so much. I mean, I know they've gotten certainly some help from certainly guys like Phil Forsberg and bringing out James Neal, and Michael Barrows even had a solid season. But in a 7-game series, if you're asking to pick Nashville and Chicago, I think I'll go to Blackhawks. Certainly, I would probably give Nashville the edge in goal with Pecorino, just with the season he's had, and hopefully, he comes back healthy and stronger for them, for the final few weeks of the season. But I think I'll take Chicago's depth over Nashville.
Well, you gave your Western Conference thought on who you think's going to come out of the West. Who do you think's going to come out of the East, Sean?
Man, I don't know. Like I say, it's just so wide open. You could poke holes in any of those the top 8 teams, but I think if I had to pick one right now, I think I would go with Tampa, just because I think that experience last year. We see a lot of times teams lose first in the playoffs and then come back very strong the next season and have deep runs. And I think that the Lightning can do that. I mean, look, last year they got bounced. They didn't have Brent Bishop for that series against the Canadiens. So if he can stay healthy, they certainly have the guns up front. They're very strong defensively. They're going to miss Radko Gudas for sure. But I think they have enough players there, enough depth that they can withstand really any of those teams under them in the Eastern Conference going forward.
Well, Sean, I know, like you, I'm excited for the start of the real games to get back underway tonight. So before I let you go, just plug where people can find your stuff, Sean.
Yeah, come check us out, Yahoo Sports, Puck Daddy blog. We're posting stuff all the time, from Jersey fouls to on-site reporting. So come check us out.
All right, Sean, thanks for joining me today on the Jason Hagholm Sports Experience, and that's it for today, everyone. Peace out.